Hello everyone, my name is Jung-Hwan Park. I'm a professor at Department of Marine Bio Materials and Aquaculture, Bugyeong National University. The topic I'm going to cover today is about culture, environment, management for aquaculture product. This topic will be covering mainly three subtopics. The first one is aquaculture systems and management, and then in second chapter we're gonna dealing with the water quality management in aquaculture systems, and the last one will be criterion of culture, environment control for ASC. The first topic is about aquaculture systems and management. In this chapter, we're going to talk about the types of aquaculture systems mainly used in the field, and also the sum of points that we have to consider when we dealing with aquaculture systems at the same time cultured animals. As you know, aquaculture systems can be classified into many types of the systems, but mainly in the field we are using four types of aquaculture systems. The first one is the pond systems, and the second one is the flow-through systems, and third one is the recirculating systems, and the last one is the cage systems. And actually, there are more different types of aquaculture systems, but like I said, those four types of systems are the mainly used in field. The first one is pond aquaculture systems. This type of system is the most used aquaculture system in the world. Basically, the large part of world fish culture production relies on the use of the freshwater pond. In statistics, over 70% of production is coming from this type of pond aquaculture systems. Basically, this system is urban impoundment for holding aquatic species, the oldest aquaculture structure due to the simplicity. The requirement for the pond construction is quite simple. Basically, this pond system will have to secure enough amount of water from many groundwater, and actually the groundwater quality will have to meet the standard for culturing aquaculture species. Like I said, this type of system is relatively simple in construction, but there are a few things we have to remember because this system is urban impoundment, so water can be spilled out through the bottom. So to prevent excessive seepage loss of water through the bottom, we will have to make sure at least the bottom should have a 25% of clay content in the soil. And also, pond aquaculture is rely on phytoplankton blooms to remove the waste from the fish, and also we'll have to supplement oxygen contents. So those phytoplankton is a kind of key factor in managing pond culture systems. So to bloom up the enough phytoplankton in pond water, we will have to make sure the soil should have good organic matter contents. Those organic matter contents will be the fertilizer to phytoplankton. So that's why I'm saying the good organic matter content will be the one of the important factors to successful pond aquaculture management. Production scale usually in this type of system is not great. It can cover the extensive to intense, semi-intense culture. So the maximum production rate when we provide enough oxygen into the pond water will be up to 1 kilo per square meter of pond surface area. There are many different types of pond systems, but mainly watershed levee systems will be the representative. This type of system will be determined. What kind of a system can be used will be determined by climate and the topography of the location where the ponds are. So the first one is the watershed pond, which means the pond is located under ground level. So water from the ground will be collected to the lower point, which is a watershed pond, and also some of the water from rainfall, and also water from rivers around can be directed to the watershed pond. So naturally, water will be collected in those lower point. That means you can put some fish in there. So as I said, the watershed pond is a natural using the natural water resources. So there usually there is no drains or the pipes to feed the water into the watershed pond. So one of the good things about watershed pond is you don't have to worry about investing a lot of money to set up the drainage or the feeding water pipe. But the main drawback of the watershed pond is you can't drain the water. That means when you harvest the fish from the watershed pond, you will have to seine continuously over and over, but you cannot make sure that you catch out all the fish in the watershed pond. Instead, the levee pond is a sort of the man-made pond. So usually dig the ground soil and then put the ground soil on the ground and making the levee around the pond. And usually people use the groundwater for filling the pond and also adding up the pond. So usually it goes on or higher ground level, and as I said, it is a man-made pond. So usually it goes with drainage, artificial drainage pipe, and also sometimes you need to put some of the inlet pipe into it. So the first picture on right side is example of levee pond. You can see the kind of regular size of the pond, and which has a levee around in each impoundment. But instead, watershed pond, there is no such a regular shape. It is naturally formed topography, and that's why the water comes into the lower point and filling up from the bottom to the top, and it cannot have the regular size of the regular shape of the pond. So regardless types of the pond systems, there are a couple of things. There are couple of things you have to consider in terms of the managemental strategy. So mainly, as I said, pond aquaculture is rely on the phytoplankton, which remove the ammonia nitrogen coming from the fish after the protein metabolism. And also the phytoplankton can supply the oxygen by photosynthesis. So mainly the pond production will be determined by the plankton blooms, because the carrying capacity will be determined by the oxygen concentration and ammonia concentration in the water. So phytoplankton control and fertilization will be one of the key factors in successful management of the pond aquaculture. Also, sometimes, and actually most of the times, to increase up the production rate from one pond, you will have to provide a supplementary aeration, because phytoplankton usually produce quite a amount of oxygen, and usually it is sufficient for fish in the pond. But in the nighttime, phytoplankton will also utilize the oxygen, which means consuming oxygen. That means you're going to have a lower oxygen concentration during the night. Sometimes it goes really a risky situation. We're going to talk about the oxygen concentration later in this lecture. But here I want to stress out a little bit more about the aeration, which is quite important in pond production. And also, though, depending on the production rate or the stocking density in pond, water exchange will be also an important factor. So you will have to keep in mind aeration and water exchange is the things you have to consider all the time during the managing the any types of pond systems. So of course the supplementary feed required in extensive systems, so you don't need to supply artificial diet into it, but to increase up the stocking density and then a production rate, you will have to consider using artificial diets. So by doing so, you can accelerate the fish growth, and eventually you can have a more production out of it. However, meaning by the supplementing feed into it, you will have to keep an eye on it more closely to pond and the animals in the pond, because by adding up the more feeding the fish with artificial diet, they will require more aeration and water exchange, because their metabolism goes up with feeding. So the next one, the point you have to keep in mind in pond management is about pond structure maintenance, because the pond levee will be erosion with the water current usually generated by aeration. It keeps up, eat up the footage of levee, and eventually you could have collapsed pond levee. So from time to time you will have to restore the soil whenever you find out the serious damage on pond levee. And sometimes aquatic plants is pain in the neck, because it carries some of the disease vectors, and you will have to remove, you will have to check all the time if aquatic plants are growing on the levee or in the middle of the pond. So whenever you find that out, you will have to remove those undesirable aquatic plants. Disease also the critical in affecting the production of pond. So disease will have to be treated all the time whenever it comes out. However, in pond aquaculture situation, it is hard to observe the fish, because the water color is quite deep, and the water depth is quite a deep too. So, but you have to make sure all the time you watch out any dead fish from pond, and you should check up each time whenever you find out the sick fish. You take out the fish out of the pond and then check out disease examination regularly. So I was talking about pond aquaculture systems. I mentioned about in general the major maintenance for pond aquaculture. So this time there are some advantages and disadvantages on pond aquaculture systems. So mainly the advantage is coming from simplicity. So you don't have to invest a lot of money to build up the pond aquaculture systems. So that means a relatively low capital cost will be required. And also, it usually goes with the impoundment by digging up the earth. So, relatively, you can build up the pond relatively in cheap price, and then you also can use the materials locally available. So also this type of system has advantage. You don't have to use a lot of water for operating. So compared to other systems we will talk about later, this system usually goes really low investment in operating, because when you go with the really high intensive aquaculture with this type of systems, you will have to of course to put a lot of money into it. But however, it goes usually this type of system goes with extensive manner in culturing, so it doesn't need a lot of operating costs into it. However, this has also disadvantages. It requires a lot of abundance and good quality of water. Once you harvest, not all the time, but many times, you will have to drain the water after harvesting, and then refill the pond with the fresh and good water quality, fresh water into it. So that means you should secure the enough amount of fresh water, or any kind of water you will have to use for your fish culture in pond. And also it contacts soil directly, so you could have high potential to disease infection compared to other systems. So that means you will have to more concern or take care of your fish closely whenever you find out any dead fish out of a pond. So it is open to nature, so it can be seen very easily. So any kind of undesirable activities, such as drain the effluent to public water, and sometimes it happens, and the people living around will raise up the red flags. So you will have to be sure your pond is acceptable in social community. So another problems with pond, uh, your fish can have off flavor in taste. So sometimes it can be really big problems, a big problem when you market your fish. The second one is a flow through system. Simply water goes through the chamber. You put the fish in it. Uh, the production rate will be determined by how much water you flow through the systems. So up to 100 kilo per cubic meter of water uh, will be the one of the kind of the highest production. However, depending on species and water flow rate, you could have a different production. Sometimes it goes much higher than that one. Usually, this type of system uses a raceway, which is a rectangular tank. With another way to say, is a rectangular tank with elongated the wall. So water flow out through the that systems and discharge from the systems. So basically, water is used once, sometimes multiple times, but there is no such a water treatment systems, which mean all the waste materials from the water, from the fish, will be discharged to natural water body, and sometimes it can cause public concerns about the pollution. So you will have to be sure the discharge water is not directly going into public water body. Before that, you will have to make sure there is a proper waste treatment system before discharging. One of the good thing about flow source system you can go really high production rate based on the per unit of space compared to pond culture, and also you can have a better observation on your fish and systems, which means you can identify there is some problems or not by directly seeing your fish. However, the disadvantage, the most important disadvantage is I mentioned earlier, the water will be discharged into the public water body, and sometimes it causes pollution issues. So you will have to make sure that there is such a good proportion of waste treatment before discharging the water. The third one is the recirculating aquaculture system. Mainly, this is a land-based aquaculture systems, recycling and reusing, use water through water treatment devices, multiple water treatment devices for culture of aquatic animals. As you can see in this figure, there are quite complicated process in this type of systems. The mainly you will have to remove the solid materials firstly, and then you should apply the nitrification biofilter to remove the ammonia nitrogen, and then there are a bunch of different types of water treatment system, such as for adding up the oxygen and disinfecting pathogens, and water temperature controls and aerations. Those kind of things you will have to apply to keep your fish alive and growing really good. It goes usually the tanks, which has a various size and shape, and it requires quite a bit engineering stuff. So you will have to ask an expert to design and install the systems in it. And then the advantage of the good thing about this system is actually you can reduce water requirement. By doing so, you can control the water quality and water temperature very easily, and also you can secure the biosecurity, which means this system is close to natural environment, and you can have a more control out of that, and you can maximize the production efficiency. However, it requires a lot of materials and infrastructures, which means you will have to invest a lot of cost and when you build up this kind of systems, and also in maintaining the system too. The last one is the KG aquaculture systems, which is one of the simplest aquaculture systems. What you need is just the structures to confine your fish in it. Usually it goes with a mesh enclosure. So you just put the frame and then hang the nets, and of course you will have to float in the cage systems. So, and then put that structure into the water and put the fish in it, and you just rely on the natural carrying capacity. Easier to feed and observation harvest. However, it is open to water, so you don't know what's going on sometimes on land. Some of the effluent from the land can affect your fish in the cage, because, like I said, it is open to open water. So even if it is quite easy to make and raise a fish, it can have quite a bit disadvantage, like a high incidence of disease and influence from localized circumstance, and other factors can affect your fish in your cage. So you have to make sure that cage system is located a really good site, not having a lot of influence from outside of cages. So thank you for listening for the first chapter about aquaculture systems and management. And the next section, next chapter will be covering the water quality management in aquaculture systems. Thank you.